What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 147 of Nintendo Noise, Flipscreen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined today by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Miss Sierra Plus Ultra.
Sup?
Welcome back, Sierra.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Great to have you back. You picked a good one, because so while we were all away a couple weeks ago, Max introduced a new format of show that you guys responded to really well. Kind of doing a bit of a series retrospective on Metroid and trying to identify whether or not the Switch was, kind of the ideal console to play Metroid on. If you could jump into that series and catch up. And I thought, let's follow up Nintendo's most obscure popular series with its most popular series. I want to ask the question, is the Nintendo Switch the best Mario console today?
It's an interesting question because we definitely have got a lot of Mario titles for the Switch, but
20 games with Mario in the title on the Switch. If you had guessed, if I had asked you, would you have thought it was 20?
No, I wouldn't have.
I definitely would not. I would have been like 12.
Yeah, I would have as well. I say like 10, but yeah, it's a very comprehensive list. But there are 5 big titles that you've listed that are missing.
We got 5 that are missing.
Yeah, and then there's some caveats that some were available. Now they're no longer available. They went away.
And there's like some other games, right? That like I've got like a kind of spin-off spot where it's like, all right, like these are some of the other titles that are missing, but not the main line stuff. Mario is obviously a little different than Metroid, right? There's so many Mario titles, and when you talk Mario title, are you talking 2D? You talking 3D? Are we talking sports games? Are we talking party? Are we talking kart? So I want to we'll go broad, right? We're going to talk Mario. Is this the best Mario console? And you identified we have 5 main series games that are currently unplayable on the Nintendo Switch. They are New Super Mario Brothers, originally released on May 15, 2006 in States on the DS. I'll save the date. It's different in every region. I'll give you the year. New Super Mario Bros. Wii, 2009. And then we've got Super Mario Galaxy 2, 2010. Of course, again on the Wii. New Super Mario 3D Land, 2011. This was on the 3DS. And then New Super Mario Bros. 2, which was 2012. That was, again, a 3DS title. So I'm seeing a bit of a theme here. Mostly 3DS games that you can't play.
Yeah.
Which I guess is kind of unsurprising. They ported pretty much every big Wii U game over to Switch already. Not many 3DS games have made the jump. The most recent, I guess, is Luigi's Mansion 2. That's just arrived, or I guess it came out
as of recording. I think it's been out for like a few days now.
Yeah, so that one's just arrived, but we've not really seen many other 3DS titles jump over. And I guess some of these had like counterparts, like 3D Land had 3D World on the Wii U as its kind of counterpart, which obviously did come
very different games though, for sure. Like 3D World is way more akin to the like formula they established in Wii, where it's like a multiplayer game as well, whereas like 3D Land is very much like it's an interesting hybrid between like 2D and 3D Mario. It's more of a 2D game, but like it takes advantage of like depth by like they'll have moments where like the camera flips and stuff. It's really, really good. That's one of my favorite Mario games.
It's one that I know you had high on your list when we ranked Mario games previously, and it's one that I've never played. I would love to see it come to the Switch. I hope it does someday.
Yeah, these are all like no-brainer like ports to me, but I don't know if they're like gauging that by like they kind of prioritize like the heavy hitters to port over to Switch versus these. And I won't lie, haven't played any of these, but I'm familiar with these titles.
3D Land, I think, is the best of these games. I think most people would agree that Galaxy 2 is kind of the most glaring omission for a couple reasons.
Yeah.
Right.
It's, I think, generally considered the better game of the 2 Galaxy games. And of course, we got Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which had Galaxy on it, right? So it felt odd that game wasn't included and that there's never been kind of a way for you to play it on anything other than the original hardware, considering it's such a well-remembered game. I think a lot of people would argue it's probably the best game on the Wii,
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, and it kind of goes hand in hand with Galaxy. You know, they've got it's one of the only Mario games, if not the only Mario game, where I can think it's had like
It's a
a
direct
direct
sequel.
sequel. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what the reservation was to not just like pop that fourth game onto 3D All Stars, or like it's 3D All Stars, the three best games. Can't put the Galaxy sequel.
It's weird to me because I wonder if it's for consistency's sake, because the original Mario All-Stars was Mario 1, 2, and 3, like remade on the Super Nintendo, but it's like, that's a bad reason. You know, it's like, that's a stupid reason to do that.
Yeah.
Like,
and what really sucks is that we get in that collection Mario 64, which came to NSO anyway. And we're also missing like Mario 64 DS. They could have put that version on there instead.
So that I wanted to call out, because I think that's kind of a bubble game for me, where like, to say it's like a mainline game that's missing is like kind of disingenuous, because it is technically a re-release, but it has unique content. Like, it is a distinct game from Mario 64, and it was available on the Wii U. So it's like
it was on the Wii U. You can play as different characters, not just Mario, which was the first time that came to that. And I loved those little mini games they came on the 3D on the DS version. It was great.
Well, they had like new stars and stuff too, right? Because you start the game as Yoshi, and you have to like get a certain amount to free Mario, Luigi, and Wario, who are all different playable characters, and they have specific like differences to their combat and everything, but also like and traversal, but also they have like specific stars that only they can get, which is like, you know, a pretty good amount of unique content. And for a game that's been ported to a modern piece of hardware in the Wii U, it feels strange to not have an option. But I guess the dual screen is
that's the difficulty with the Wii U. Obviously, you had the gamepad, and you could have the top screen on your TV. You've got that difficulty. They could do it. They just have to put a lot of extra legwork in. You probably would have to bin off the second screen, but they did that with Splatoon 2. That translated really well. It was initially designed for the gamepad on the Wii U. You had the map on the bottom screen, and you just press a button to bring that up. Like, I think they could have easily translated that over to the Switch if they wanted to, but 3D All-Stars felt like it was, you know, it's a collection of emulated games. I think they could have easily put Galaxy 2 in there. They obviously already had the Wii emulator up and running for Galaxy itself. The same with Sunshine, that was working absolutely fine, and they managed to like make some customization there.
Yeah, that's true, right? They did make changes to it. To Sierra's point, I feel like particularly the new Super Mario Bros. Games like feels like a real kind of like, how have you just not done this yet? How have you not done like a simple straight up port like that? Like,
I think maybe we get a collection for those, like the new
that's
Super
what
Mario
I was going to say.
collection.
That's what I would do. I would call it the new Super Mario Brothers collection, and like have, you know, 1, Wii, and 2 in one collection, and maybe you put the U game in there as well, but like that got its own port, obviously, since nobody played it on the Wii U, and it was a really good game, and they wanted to get a little bit more life out of it. But you know, these games were all really successful, right? Like they were all huge, especially the first one was like a major seller. So it's like,
they're pretty averse to doing collections these days, though. I thought we were going to get the Metroid Prime trilogy. We only get Metroid Prime. We don't get the other ones. Pikmin's the same. Why not bundle those as like a collection? We kind of got them as separate releases.
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be super surprised if we started seeing these games get ported over on the next generation, though. Like, because you got to think, right? Like, 20-year anniversary of New Super Mario Brothers is 2 years from now. Would be a good time to re-release it. And you got to think that for the entire generation of kids that grew up with the DS, the way that we grew up with the Game Boy, like,
and now they're 20 years old, and then, you know, or in their 20s, and they want to play these games again.
Nostalgia for the game that they grew up with that you can't play on it. Yeah, it's like, why not, right? Like, why not capitalize on that legacy then? But
yeah, it'll be a good time to do it. I don't know that they ever really plan that very well. We don't ever really see much for anniversaries. Like the Kirby anniversary we did, and I guess Mario, the actual 35 years we did, we got the collection, and we also got Mario 35, which is no longer available.
Totally depends, right? Like, it's so like they either celebrate it well or they like don't. It's like, yeah, it's the anniversary. Here's a shirt. It's like, what? Okay.
Yeah, what did they do for Zelda?
The most recent one was
We got
Wasn't the most recent one
a
like
limited
30?
edition console, maybe. I think that was the year we got that
Yeah.
one, the Zelda console. And no, we got the Game and Watch, the Zelda Game and Watch.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I remember it being something really egregious.
That was it. That was it. Which is
And
like,
it's like, where the
Come
fuck's
on.
Wind Waker? But you know,
Yeah,
we've got
it's
a
like one
Game
of
and
those-
Watch Zelda.
We know you're screaming from the mountaintops for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess ports. Here's a Game and Watch.
it's one of those things where it's like, all right, cool, like great, but like that's all you got. Like, you know, it's like I'm not like they did that with what was it, Pokemon's 25th? I think was when Sun and Moon were out, and it was the thing where it was like, okay, cool, like there's a bunch of stuff that's just like stuff, right? Or like
Yeah.
Mario, I remember like the 30th anniversary, they did like, or maybe it was the 35th, it was like they did like a fashion line, and it was like cool. They also had games, right? They also had like a thing to market, you know?
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that is wishful thinking on my part that it's like that they would time it that way. But I guess my point there is more, is there not a generation of gamers with a ton of nostalgia for this game that sold incredibly well that would be willing to buy it again for $60? And I feel like the answer to that is yes. It's just a matter of, I guess, if they're ready to meet that demand, or if they maybe think that those games haven't aged well or something like that, you know, but
they could do like the Mario Wonder treatment to them, right? Where it plays a little bit differently, the controls are a little bit more fluid, and you can bring in the same thing with the badges and stuff and revive those games rather than doing a straight port. You could do a remake of it.
I think either way, that would be a good decision, you know, but yeah, I mean, my personal bias for 3D Land aside, I definitely think the worst thing on this list is not having Galaxy 2 as an option, because it's just so definitively considered the better
you don't
game.
even have Galaxy as an option anymore. Like 3D All Stars is gone. It was on sale for a year and then they took it off, and there's no official way to play that game on the Switch.
I got a sealed copy, you know, if anybody wants to $1,000, hit me up, you know. Trying to go on vacation, baby. But yeah, so I think that aside, right? Like you brought up Mario 35, we talked about the DS title. You know, I think aside from that, you know, there are a few other games missing that I think are worth calling out, right? The original Super Mario Maker never got a port. That's fine. We have 2, but I am probably going to bring 2 up as a negative point against the Switch when we're talking about definitive console later on.
2 was definitely better than the original Mario Maker. It brought the 3D land stuff aesthetic over to it.
I think you're right, cool. But I think it's irrelevant that it's better because the game did not connect the way that the first one did. Right?
I think it didn't connect the way the first one did because there was so much else on the Switch. And it's like, I'm struggling to find games to play on the Wii U. Oh, I guess I'll play Mario Maker and make some games for myself, or play stuff that other people are making for me. But New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe came out like 2 months prior to this. If you were after a taste of 2D Mario, you had one of the best 2D Mario games come to Switch just 2 months prior.
What a cultured opinion there, Steve. I appreciate that. Love that opinion.
Versus, Mario Maker 2. It's just like, yeah, it's cool, but I've got to make the games myself. I actually just want to play games.
I just like, I don't know if y'all were like dialed in on that community at the time, but I just remember back when the original game came out, like how fucking prevalent it was on Twitch in the early days of streaming, where it was like, you know, it was like, I remember like, I can't remember his last name, but Ross, Rubber Ross, he's a streamer, but he used to be a part of the Game Grumps. And I remember he was like making levels that like everyone was playing. And it was like, you know, like, Maddie from Maddie Makes Games made like a set of levels, and
but she did the same thing for
2, right?
For 2, and those games were great. Like the levels that she created were phenomenal, and some of them were really hard. And seeing people beat those were really cool. And I do remember watching YouTube videos of like compilations of some of the coolest levels that people have put together. Whether that was like the best music levels, and it's literally like, people have made like beats with the music blocks, and all you had to do was run through.
You just run and jump, and then it would play the whole song for you. Yeah. And that's like the thing is, I feel like Nintendo fumbled the bag with that game in a big way, where like the first game was such a moment, and the fact that they were like, you know, whether it's whatever you want to attribute it to, the release and then kind of lack of support for it was such a, I think it's one of the few big failures I think they had this generation, because they took something that was super beloved and viable and kind of like it just feels like it's like, oh, here's another one that didn't hit. Okay, we're never going to do that again. And it's a shame because I think, there was a time where everyone was like, where's Zelda Maker? Right?
Yeah.
Like, give us a Zelda Maker, give us a Metroid Maker. Like, and I think that's a thing that they could have viably probably continued to push and make something that, would have had even longer, a longer tail than it ended up having, right? It feels like it was a game that came and went, whereas the original is one of the defining games of the Wii U, which doesn't say that much, but, it's a shame for sure. They didn't have that problem with Splatoon, right?
They didn't, but look at Splatoon 3. I don't think that connected as well as Splatoon 2.
That's true. It's true. We'll have to talk about that in our Splatoon episode.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to be the best console for Splatoon because there's only one other option, and it's the Wii U, and it ain't that, right? So
it's also the best console for ARMS.
That is true. Best console for ARMS, unquestionably. So we also had Super Mario Run. That's like the mobile only game, right? Like, not obviously, it makes sense that it's not on Switch. That's fine, but worth calling out because
I loved that game, but $9.99 paying £10 for a mobile game.
It's an Ultimate Runner,
doesn't feel right. People don't pay for mobile games. I think Nintendo learned that the hard way.
At least not $10. If it was $5 even, you'd be like, all right, maybe, right? Like, that's somewhat reasonable, but $10 feels steep for what is ultimately an infinite runner that Shigeru Miyamoto made, right? Okay. Super Mario Bros. 35, rest in peace. It was one of the unique experiences. Unfortunately, that's gone. As Steve pointed out earlier, we had Mario Party 4 through 10, plus all of the like non-numbered ones that have come out. None of those are available. I think that's not a great loss, excluding 4 and 5.
Come on. Some of those were great on the GameCube.
That's what I mean, though. That's 4, 5, and 6, right?
Yeah, those are phenomenal.
Yeah,
the
those games are
microphone one was 6. That's great, and the little time shift as well. I think 7's decent. We obviously had the DS version, which I don't think we were going to get. And one thing I really did hope we would get, do you remember they brought to the 3DS? And it was just like, where the fuck is Mario Party on the Switch? And it was before we'd actually got in. It was like the Mario Party mini game extravaganza, where it's just
it was like
mini games,
the top 100 games across every Mario Party, and it's like, okay, why aren't you giving me that on Switch?
It looks like maybe we're gonna get that in Jamboree because we get 110 mini games in that one, but it's just so bizarre. Some of their like choices at the beginning of the generation were just weird. It was like they weren't sure with the Switch. They were sort of dipping their toes in, and then like, oh, maybe, but we still got all these games on the 3DS pipeline, and we're just gonna release them anyway.
So the other kind of big spin-off, right, being Mario Kart. We have, of course, Super Mario Kart, Mario 64 are both available on NSO. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the best Mario Kart, no problem there. It's everyone in between 64 and 8 that we're missing. So that's Double Dash, DS, Wii, and 7 are all missing. And I think that's understandable. I think that the one that I am most bummed about there is Double Dash, because Double Dash is unique, right? It's the only Mario Kart game that has that mechanic. And, I feel like DS, Wii, and 7 all kind of just, 7 especially, kind of feel like, stepping blocks to what 8 became.
Most of those courses came to 8 anyway, even if it's in the new DLC pack. Like we got Coconut Mall from the Wii, we got some of the ones from the DS, and not on your list, Mario Kart Tour, the mobile version.
Oh, right, correct.
Those tracks also came over in that DLC pack. But I mean, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the best version of Mario Kart. I tried going back and playing the Wii version the other week on my Steam Deck out of interest, and it was just like, ugh, I'd rather play all of these levels on the Switch instead.
Yeah, for sure. Which is why I think Double Dash is really the only notable omission, because like that game,
it's a unique experience,
Yeah. It's really not a 1-to-1 competitor for like 8, so they really could have ported that one. Totally. I feel like it wouldn't have been weird.
And like, I think what was cool about that too is like that you had the option to play collaboratively with a friend. Like I remember doing that with a buddy, where it would be like we would be racing the PCs or NPCs, and like, you're Baby Mario in the front, I'm Luigi in the back, and it's like you're steering and I'm attacking, and then we switch, and like that as an experience was super novel, and something that particularly like if you have kids or whatever, I could definitely see being something that is just a cool, unique thing that is missing, and I would love to see that get represented. Or
even if it's just a mode,
a
put
sequel.
a mode into 8 or Mario Kart 9 or whatever the next one's going to be called. Mario Kart X, I think the rumor was.
10, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
technically. So then I think now this is the biggest sticking point for me when we get into the debate on what the best Mario console is that the Mario sports titles, it's kind of rough because some of the best ones are available, right?
I thought you liked golf on the in the Switch.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, but it's it's not the best one, right? I think my problem with the Switch sports titles is that the best that they ever achieve is okay. There's not been one that I think is essential or like really.
It's not
excellent.
like Strikers on the GameCube.
And even that, they did a Strikers port and it wasn't or a sequel and it wasn't very good, right? They did a Tennis Aces. Tennis Aces was not good,
I heard it was not good, yeah.
Golf, like I had fun with it. Chewy had fun with it, but it was a game that I bounced off of. I didn't think that it had enough content. The roadmap was not there for how much content was there at launch. They did release new stuff eventually, but it was just, too little too late. I think in general, the Mario sports titles are just not in a good spot. But I do think that most of the best versions are on NSO. So, kind of cancels it out, I guess. I don't think there's another console that has a better selection aside from, maybe the GameCube, right?
The GameCube,
probably has the 3 best ones, and those are not there, unfortunately. But like the original Mario Tennis is on N64. That still holds up really well. Mario Golf on Game Boy holds up really well. Like those are there and playable. But yeah, you're missing a couple of the special ones. It would be great to have like original Strikers port or Mario Hoops, some of those games that are just not playable anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, Pete got into basketball in a big way the last couple of years now, where he just really wants to play Mario.
I want Mario Hoops so bad.
Please let Pete scratch that itch.
I just need it. Because like when I first got into basketball, I was like, yeah, I'm going to try NBA 2K. And then I was like, oh, I'm too stupid for this. My brain's too smooth. I can't figure this out.
Yeah, we need more arcade sports games, and the Mario ones were some of the best. They really were.
I need an NBA Jam with Mario characters. That's what I'm looking for. Everybody.
Oh my god, that would make my life. Oh my god!
Can they do the big head mode in that? I really want to see Mario.
That was like NBA Street. I think it was Volume 2, maybe on GameCube. Like they were all unlockable characters, so you could have your pickup team be Mario, Luigi, and Peach. I think, and it was like so sick. Like, it was totally awesome. So like, just give me one of those. That'd be great. Then I think so. Here's one that I think is interesting. There are a couple Paper Mario games missing, but it's all the ones that nobody really likes.
Well, the one that everyone likes, the only one everyone likes, came to Switch this year.
And then the original's been on NSO for like a long time. So it's like the 2 that are worth playing are right there. So you're like, you're all set.
Star. I hope they learn a big lesson from like their missteps in the Paper Mario franchise, because it's so charming, but like everything after Thousand Year Door is doo-doo. Like Origami King had an awesome story, but like I feel like they don't need to reinvent the wheel every time they do one of these games, and I feel like that's exactly what they do.
Yeah, they're always like trying to. I think it's pretty similar to some of the conversations you and I have had about Pokemon, where it's like there doesn't need to be a fucking gimmick every time.
Yeah,
right. Like it's like just make a good RPG. It's like the thing that's charming about Paper Mario is the story and like the environments and everything, and it's like the gameplay is it's very good, but it's also not like stupid complex, right? And it's like the kind of like gimmick they introduced in Thousand Year Door is like the audience, right? And it's like cool, that's like an X factor to the combat, but it's not like to your point, totally reinventing the wheel and being like, we had to come up with this wacky thing, but also like because it's a Mario RPG, it can't be quote unquote that hard, right? So it's like, all right, well, like, what's the point? I remember like you and Chewy talking about what's the one that you just said, the one that just came out on Switch before Thousand Year Door,
Origami King.
Right. And it's like, I remember you two talking about it and being like, you can skip most of the battles because there's like no experience. Like it doesn't really do anything,
That's
like,
another thing. Oh my God. Yes.
Like that's such a wacky decision,
Yeah.
And like, while I've been playing Thousand Year Door this year, like I go into every battle I can just because it's fun, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just a good simple RPG, you know. Sometimes that's enough.
Yeah. Like, you don't see turn-based JRPGs like completely changing how the battling works with every release. Like, I can't think of any series off the top of my head, but surely there are, like, I mean,
The
at the bare
Bravely
minimum,
series, I guess. did.
Bravely, like Octopath.
Yeah, but again, right? Like the second
know?
one's the one that's bad.
Yeah, and
It's
then
like-
they went back to it, yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's like if it's not broken, don't fix it. You know, like iterate, sure, right? But it's like, particularly with franchises that go away for a long time, it's like we don't get that many Paper Marios. If you just gave us a new, you know, story with the same old gameplay, like I really don't think people would be upset about that. You know?
Yeah.
It's not like Pokemon where there's one every year, so they're like, of course we need to have a thing. This is the new thing. It's like, all right, fair enough, but like for Mario, the new thing is the script. It's a new script that's funny and engaging. Like that's what I'm looking for out of those games, right? And it's like that's been the lineage since Mario RPG, you know, or even like the Mario and Luigi series, which we're going to talk about now. Like the combat is pretty similar in most of those games. It's just like here's the new, you know, hook, like story wise, like Partners in Time. Bowser's Inside Story is so remembered because of its story more so than anything. You know,
it's strange that they think that they would have to reinvent the wheel, though, because, you know, with 2D Mario, it's not like they're changing the way he jumps in every single game and like what he's got to do. It's like you're going from left to right on the screen, and that's enough. You know, we maybe add some new mechanics and some new characters and new cool environments there, but it's not like they're really changing massively. I guess with Wonder, they did with the badge system and mixed it up and the way.
But even that, it's an iteration.
Yeah.
You know, like it still feels like similar to the core identity of what Mario is. So you compare Super Mario Brothers to Super Mario 3, right? And it's like 3 feels like the most polished version of 1. Sometimes that's all you need to do, right? Is just like get another at bat and learn from the mistakes that you made and learn and like get to try some of the ideas that got left on the cutting floor. It's like I definitely think like Paper Mario is like a great example of just overdoing it, you know, and like putting like a bad amount of thought into iteration, being so obsessed with iteration that you like get away from what works.
Yeah, which I guess Pokemon has had some of that, and it kind of lost its way in the middle.
Yep.
Like I remember you telling me the ones on the 3DS, you just were like, oh, for fuck's sake, you know, I just want to.
Those are my
play
least favorite.
Pokemon.
Yeah, by a lot, right? And it's like, you know, there are things that they do well. Like I don't think that they're devoid of good ideas. And there's some that I, you know, like Sun and Moon, I liked playing it once, but going back to it now, it's like, Jesus Christ, how many fucking cutscenes do I got to watch before I can do something?
Oh my God, I know.
You know, it's like, Jesus Christ. So yeah, I think Paper Mario, you're not losing out on anything. Mario and Luigi is where it gets interesting because that one, none of the like classic good ones are available. That's a shame.
We're getting a new one. Getting a new one this year.
Yeah, for sure. If you're a Mario and Luigi fan, I think 3DS is probably your console. But aside from that, you're in pretty good shape. So we're gonna take a break here so I can tell you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of July. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Sobi, Snackago, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and Also Boobies, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You're all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to go above and beyond just like they did, you want to show your support, get early access to the show, you can go and do that over at patreon.com/flipscreengames. But of course, if you don't have any money for us, head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find all the ways that you can get involved in the show or the community that won't cost you a pretty penny. You can write into the show for the question block, like a bunch of you did this week. And we're gonna do a grab bag. I've been collecting a bunch of questions, and I think we're gonna do like a question and answer focused episode next week. So if you've got a question for us that you've been sitting on, or if you want to think about one for next week, please make sure that you write it in all the ways that you can over on flipscreen.games. However you choose to get involved, thanks for tuning into another episode of the show. All right, so now we got to get into making our case here. Right? If the Switch is the best console for Mario, I'm inclined to say yes. based on
me
this
too.
conversation so far. I think there's a very small amount of games that are missing. I think the failure of Mario sports titles is its big Achilles heel, but I also think that doesn't matter nearly as much as like on the pantheon of Mario properties. Mario sports are probably the least important, right? It's mainline, kart, party, depending on your taste, and then sports. I would say.
I mean, kart is arguably their most important franchise. It sells the most. It's their most popular game by far on the Switch, and it's the best Mario Kart game. And on top of that, they brought a ton more courses with the expansion pass that you could either buy or you got as part of NSO when you subscribe, and you get access to all of the other games that are on NSO. I think combine that with what I think is two of the best 3D Mario games with Bowser's Fury and Mario Odyssey, and what I think is my favorite 2D Mario with Mario Wonder. I can't see any other console that beats out the Switch for me.
I think one of the things I also want to applaud them for is how many. There are multiple versions of many of these games, and almost all of them are available, right? Like if you go to the NSO list, you've got Super Mario Brothers, you got Super Mario Brothers: The Lost Levels. Moving over to Advance, you have Super Mario Advance, which is the original Super Mario Advance is, I want to say,
Super Mario World, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you're right. No, wait, that's 2. 2 Super Mario World, 3 is Yoshi's Island, 4 is Mario Brothers 3. So is Super Mario Advance the original one? Look that up for me, please, Steve.
It is a port of Super Mario Brothers 2.
That's 2. Okay. So those are all like slight differences, right? Like I think Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, which is the one on Game Boy, is like the only version of Super Mario Brothers that's missing, because you can also get the Arcade Archives version, which is like the arcade cabinet version of Super Mario Brothers, which has slightly different placement of everything. Like they even have that on here, you know, not on NSO, it's its own download, but still, it's like basically every version of the classics is available, save for 64 DS, which we talked about, right? Like very, very few examples of even mild iteration not being available, which I think is really, really cool, right?
Yes,
whichever version you grew up with is there.
It's kind of crazy that Super Mario World on the SNES and Super Mario Advance 2, which are essentially the same game.
They do have differences, though. And there are things that, like, if you're nostalgic for that version, I could see you wanting, you know, the alternative, right? Like one of the like stupid little things is that like in the Super Mario World, or I'm sorry, Super Mario Advance version of Yoshi's Island, they added in like these like super compressed Yoshi sound effects and stuff like that, right? And it's like there's little things like that I think are minor changes, to be sure, right? They are essentially the same game, but like I grew up with the Super Mario Advance version, so like there is something to going back to the one that you remember and getting to, you know, have that moment with it. And I think it, to your point, would have been very easy to not include those. So I think it's pretty cool that they are there, right? Even if, you know, ultimately it's not a major change. It's like it's nice to have that option, you know?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I guess really it's anything after the N64 and the Game Boy Advance that we're then missing, isn't it? It's like the GameCube, yes, you could get Mario Sunshine as part of that 3D All-Stars collection, but it's now gone away. But at least it was there on the console.
Yeah.
And we already spoke about Double Dash and the sports games. But really, I think it's Mario Sunshine and then both the Galaxies that are the two I'd really love to see get official releases.
I know. That's a pity that you can't just like go out and buy those or like have them available on NSO. Like and that it was a timed release. Other than that, like Super Mario Odyssey is such a quintessential Switch game. Even the strength of that title alone, and then like everything that followed as far as Mario goes, like really makes the Switch like I think the best. Like you can get some of the most unique Mario experiences on the Switch.
Totally. I think it's like worth pointing out to like what a splash Odyssey made, because it's I don't know, it's a game I think about a lot because I feel like it doesn't get talked about that much anymore. Like it doesn't get as much attention as like Breath of the Wild, which I think is a shame. And also, like, it was the first time in a long time that like a Mario game was a Game of the Year contender, right? And that like it was like, oh, like this is the game of the moment, right? Because as great as Galaxy and Galaxy 2 were, right? Like, you know, the amount of people that bought Wii's versus the amount of people that played those games, right, is, you know, it's a pretty big disparity, right? Whereas like Odyssey was one of the big games at launch. And I think, you know, if you were to make a list of the best Nintendo Switch games, I think most people would have it in their top 5. And, you know, that's great, you know, and it was a big seller. And, it, you know, I think it really did help usher in the kind of like renaissance that we're seeing for Mario right now, right? Like with the movie and with
I think
Wonder
I think it's responsible for something like Astro's Playroom as well. Like that experience very much feels like a Nintendo experience and a Mario Odyssey experience. And
showing that like a 3D platformer could still be like a viable $60 box title that like comes out and really impresses.
And I think that is directly, Mario Odyssey is directly responsible for that, and probably the revival of like Crash Bandicoot as well, and Spyro, and bringing those back as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and then I think like, you know, when you look at the other like original stuff that's on here, right? Like, so like we said, there's 20 Mario games that were released. We have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I think definitively the best Mario Kart game, right? For our money. We have the Mario Plus Rabbids, both of those releases, which, you know, I think are really good games and are kind of underappreciated a little bit. Or like a good new skew of the like Mario RPG flavor, right? And like kind of taking on that like XCOM kind of battle style was cool and innovative, and definitely something that I think people were not expecting to be as good as it is.
Well, I remember when that leaked and everyone was just like, oh God, no, not the Rabbids. Like, what are they doing? And then the game came out and they showed the gameplay footage, and it was just like, wow, this actually looks like a really fun, legitimate game. And you can always pick up at least the original title so cheap in every seller because it's a Ubisoft game and not a Nintendo game. And it's well worth playing if you've not played it. Like but Sierra was right. There's like such a large variety here, and like some of the most unique experiences. You know, you got strategy games and sport games and platformers and party games and car races. I can't really think of this level of variety on any other Nintendo console.
And again, Mario. Right, like 2 3D games that I think are in the conversation for best 3D Mario, and 2 2D games that are in the conversation for best 2D Mario. You know, it's like that's pretty legit. I guess 1 technically, because the Wii U port is a port, but
Bowser's Fury is
I'm counting as its own thing for the 3D side of like that game is such a phenomenal release, even though it's, you know, a small add-on or whatever. Like Bowser's Fury is so cool.
Yeah, it really is. And I know you bashed Mario Maker 2, and I don't think it got enough support from Nintendo, but it
is a good game, though.
It is a really good game, and it's really cool that they brought that here. It's a shame that they've turned the servers off for that now, but it was well worth checking out when you could.
And then again, right, like I think when you talk about like re-releases, right, like the long-awaited remake of Super Mario RPG, right, the long-awaited remake of Paper Mario and the Thousand-Year Door. We got the, you know, not on the same level, but, you know, there are certainly a lot of people that really love the Mario versus Donkey Kong series. Like that it just got to come back, right? And it really feels like the breadth of Mario experiences that have been available are very, very well represented on the Switch, despite a few notable omissions. I think you're the list of truly meaningful experiences that are missing is very short.
Yeah, definitely small. And like even titles that don't have Mario in the name that are still in my mind Mario games, like Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker that came over. Fantastic puzzle game. Yeah. I love it. It's so charming. It's got all the Mario iconography and characters that you would expect, and just like a absolutely gorgeous isometric world that you play in. And they added a bunch of new levels when that came over to the Switch, and it's just a really great experience. Like, I don't think, aside from consoles maybe with the virtual console, like the Wii and the Wii U, and obviously those are turned off now. I don't think you're going to get such a broad selection of games because we got a lot of original titles along with everything that's on NSO with the Switch.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even with the virtual consoles, like, each of those had things on this list that weren't there. So you gotta, I think give that edge there because it's I think it's tough to argue, right, that there's a better candidate outright, right? There are certainly libraries with very, very good titles that are missing, the 3DS, the GameCube. But yeah, I mean, I think in the most uncharitable reading, there's probably about 6 games, right? 8 games that you're missing from that list. When you think about how many Mario games there are, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to plant my flag on this one. The Nintendo Switch, definitively the best Mario console. How do we feel about that, folks?
No,
I
absolutely.
agree. Yeah.
1000%.
You know what, Nintendo? Take yourself a victory lap. Good job. You nailed it. Good job. Golf claps all around, everybody. It's wonderful, wonderful. So, thank you all for joining us here in another episode of Nintendo Noise. If you want to write in with your thoughts on what the best Mario console is, I would love to hear from you. If there's one of you out there that was like yelling the entire time, absolutely not, this is the better one, I want to hear from you, you sicko. That's the kind of intense comment I'm looking for, everybody. Or if you just want to, reminisce with us and write in with your favorite Mario title and or your favorite Mario title that hasn't been brought over yet. If you were going to port one of those missing games, what would be your first candidate? That's a question I'm very interested in hearing the answer to. And if you want to make a suggestion for the next franchise that we should do a retrospective on, please hit us up in all the ways that you can. Again, that's flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find all the places we are all over the web, all the ways that you can get involved with the community or write into the show. You'll find them all right there. And guess what? The link's down in the description down below. So go over there, click on some stuff. It helps us out quite a bit more than it will cost you. Even if you go and back us on Patreon, it'll still help us out more than it costs you. So think about that, everybody. The power is in your hands. Just like the Power Glove. Maybe we do a retrospective on Nintendo accessories. That would be a fun one.
Oh, wow. Can't wait for the Wii era. With
Link
Now you're playing with power.
My beloved Link cable.
Ooh, I might go to bat for that as the best Nintendo accessory. The Link. That's an interesting conversation. We'll save that for another day.
Latency.
What about my little worm light that I had for my Game Boy?
Oh,
So
yeah.
Yeah, cool.
That
That's not the
too.
reason I'm wearing glasses at all. It's not the worm light. It's totally not.
I feel like we really got to make a visual companion for that the retrospection. Got to have the
YouTube,
visuals.
if you listen to the audio version, I'll email you a slideshow, and you can go through it as you listen. All right, folks. Well, thank you again for joining us on this very special episode of Nintendo Noise. For the crew, I've been Pete. She's been Sierra. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.